The listing was only 2 lines long, and I almost missed it because the page refreshed while I was scrolling. For a second it vanished, replaced by warehouse shifts and delivery routes and the same positions I'd been applying to for months. Then it flickered back into place like it had decided to stay. Night driver needed. Route 77, midnight to 4 a.m., 800 per shift. Cash paid at end of run. Call after 9 p.m. No company name, no logo, no address. Just a number with a New Mexico area code and a posting date from earlier that week. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because it looked legitimate, but because it didn't. Jobs that pay that much don't hide. They advertise, they interview, they verify. This one just sat there like it didn't care who found it, like it knew someone eventually would. My phone was face down on the table next to a stack of envelopes I hadn't opened yet. I already knew what they were. Final notices, adjustments, polite language wrapped around numbers that didn't care whether I could pay them or not. My mother had stopped mentioning the bills out loud, which somehow made them heavier. When people stop talking about a problem, it doesn't mean it's gone. It means it's settled in. I flipped one envelope open anyway. The number inside was higher than I expected. It shouldn't have surprised me. It always climbed. That was the pattern. Medication, tests, follow-ups, things insurance decided not to cover after the fact. I checked my bank balance again, even though I had checked it an hour earlier. Nothing had changed. It wasn't going to. The job listing was still open on my laptop. Same 2 lines, same number, no details. I told myself it was a scam. That was the reasonable explanation. Cash jobs with no company name don't lead anywhere good. Best case, it's a waste of time. Worst case, it's something you don't walk away from clean. I had walked away from enough things that weren't clean. I didn't need another one. I picked up my phone anyway. The call rang once. Then it connected. Route 77, a voice said. Not a greeting, not a question. I hesitated just long enough to notice it. Yeah, I saw the listing. You have a commercial license. It wasn't phrased like a question either. Class B, 7 years, city routes. A pause, not long, measured. Report tomorrow, 11:30 p.m., Old Depot, off Route 66, mile marker 11, do not be late. That's it? I asked. If you arrive early, wait in your vehicle. Do not approach the building until you are called. The line went quiet for half a second, like it was deciding whether to say more. Bring nothing you can't afford to leave behind. Then the call ended. I kept the phone to my ear for a moment after the disconnect tone started, like something else might come through if I waited. It didn't. I set it down slowly and looked back at the laptop screen. The listing was gone. I refreshed the page, scrolled, searched the keywords again. Nothing. For a few minutes I just sat there, one hand on the table, the other resting near the phone, like I might need to grab it quickly. The room felt different, not in any dramatic way, just slightly off, like a sound had stopped that I hadn't noticed before. I told myself again that it was a bad idea. Then I looked at the open envelope. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was scared, not exactly. It was more like my mind had decided to stay active, whether I wanted it to or not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the listing in the same place on the screen. 2 lines, 800 cash, midnight to 4. By the time the sun came up, I had already decided I was going, not because I trusted it, because I didn't have a better option. The drive out took longer than I expected. The city thinned out gradually, lights spacing farther apart, buildings giving way to stretches of road that didn't lead anywhere I recognized. I kept checking the mile markers, like I was counting down to something specific, even though I wasn't sure what. Marker 9. Marker 10. I slowed as 11 came into view. The depot wasn't visible at first, just darkness stretching out on both sides of the road. Then my headlights caught the edge of a structure set back from the highway. Concrete, low, A single overhead light casting a pale circle onto an empty bay. No signage I could read from the road. No other vehicles. I pulled over about 50 yards short of the entrance and cut the engine. The silence settled in quickly, thick enough that I could hear the ticking of the engine cooling down. I checked the time. 11:12 p.m. Too early. I stayed in the car. At 11:27, the overhead light flickered once. At 11:29, it steadied. At 11:30 exactly, the bay door lifted. Slow, smooth. No grinding, no hesitation, like it had been maintained even if nothing else had. A figure stood just inside the light, waiting. I waited a few seconds after the door finished opening, not because I was told to, but because it felt like the kind of place where moving too quickly would count against you. The figure didn't wave or signal. It just stood there, positioned exactly in the center of the light, as if that spot had been chosen for a reason. I started the engine and rolled forward. Gravel crunched under the tires as I pulled into the lot. The sound carried farther than it should have, stretching out into the dark beyond the building before fading completely. I parked where the light reached its weakest edge and turned the car off again. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, the figure stepped forward. A woman, late 60s maybe, gray hair cut short and close to the head, uniform pressed clean, but from a design I didn't recognize. The color was wrong for any transit authority I'd worked with. Dark green, almost black under the light, with a patch on the shoulder that had faded past legibility. She stopped a few feet from my driver's side window. "You waited," she said. It wasn't approval, just acknowledgement. "You said to," I replied. Another small pause, measured again, like the one on the phone. "Step out." I did. Up close, the uniform looked older than I first thought. Not worn out, preserved. Like it hadn't aged so much as been kept in a condition where aging didn't apply. "I'm Idris," she said. "You'll be driving tonight." No handshake. No introduction beyond that. "I didn't sign anything," I said. "You called. That's enough." That should have been a red flag. It was. I noticed it. I just didn't act on it. She turned without checking if I would follow and walked toward the open bay. I hesitated for half a second, then went after her. The inside of the depot was smaller than it looked from the outside. One main room with a desk, an old radio setup, and a narrow hallway that led somewhere out of sight. The air smelled clean, not like dust or disuse, but like something that had been maintained consistently over time. No clocks. That stood out immediately. Every transit space I'd ever worked in had clocks everywhere. This place didn't show it anywhere. Idris didn't slow as she moved through the room. "You've driven routes before." 7 years. "City routes are different," she said. "This one does not tolerate adjustment." We passed through a second door into the bus bay. The bus was already there. Mid-1970s coach, deep green with a white stripe along the side. The paint was flawless. Not restored, maintained. Chrome polished. Windows clear. Tires looked new enough to still carry a factory sheen. Route 77 displayed above the windshield. I stopped a few steps short of the door. "It runs," Idris said. I figured. That is not what I said. I looked at her, then back at the bus. Up close, there was something off about it. Not visually, not in any way I could point to immediately. More like the absence of expected imperfections. No scratches, no uneven wear, no signs of replacement parts. Like it had always been exactly this way. "Come," she said. I stepped up into the bus. The interior matched the exterior. Clean to the point of discomfort. Vinyl seats without cracks. Metal floor polished enough to reflect the overhead lights in a dull sheen. And next to the driver's seat, the box. Mounted where a fare system should have been, but different in every way that mattered. Metal housing, glass front, no visible wiring. Inside, a dark display where something moved slowly, like smoke drifting through still air. I leaned slightly closer without thinking. The movement reacted. Not fast, not sudden. but enough to register that it had noticed me. "That's the fare box," Idris said from behind me. "That's not any fare box I've seen. It's the only one that matters here." I straightened. "What does it do?" "It tells you what to do." "That's not how fare boxes work." "No," she agreed, "it isn't." She stepped past me and placed her hand lightly on top of the box. The movement inside it slowed, settling into a tighter pattern. "Listen to it," she said. "Do not interpret. Do not anticipate. Follow exactly." She handed me a laminated card. "Read." I took it. 8 rules, numbered, typed in plain, unremarkable font. The first 2 were standard. Maintain route timing. Do not stop between designated markers. The third was where it shifted. Passengers are not to be addressed unless necessary. The fourth, passengers are cargo. I glanced up at her. "What does that mean?" "It means what it says." I looked back down. Rule 5. If the interior lights change color, increase speed until they return to normal. Rule 6. Do not stop for the figure in the yellow raincoat. There was a space before the next line, like whoever wrote it had considered leaving it out. "It has been waiting longer than you have been alive." I read that one twice. Rule 7. If you are instructed not to look, do not look. Rule 8. At the terminal, do not remain on the bus after passengers have exited. I lowered the card slightly. "This isn't—" "Memorize them," Idris said. "You won't have time to read while driving." "What happens if I don't follow one?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her tone hadn't changed. "You won't complete the route." "That's not an answer. It is the only one you need." I looked back at the card. The rules didn't feel exaggerated. That would have been easier to dismiss. They felt specific, functional, like they had been adjusted over time. "How many drivers?" I asked. "Enough," she said. "That's not a number." "No." She stepped back toward the door of the bus. "You begin at midnight. The route will present itself. Do not leave early." I checked my watch out of habit. 11:47 p.m. "Where does it go?" I asked. "The route," she said, "goes where it needs to." Then she stepped off the bus. I stayed in the driver's seat, the laminated card still in my hand. The fare box display remained dark, but the movement inside it hadn't stopped. Slow, circular, patient. At 11:52, the overhead lights dimmed slightly. At 11:55, the fare box flickered. Green. Text appeared. "Prepare to depart." I set the card down beside me and placed my hands on the wheel. At 11:59, the bay door began to open again. At midnight exactly, the road outside wasn't the same. There's a moment when something changes, and your mind tries to force it back into what it understands. Not denial exactly, more like a delay. A brief refusal to process what you're seeing until it can be explained. That moment didn't last long. 1 second, the depot opened onto the same empty stretch of desert I had driven through to get there. Flat land, scattered scrub, the highway cutting through it like a line drawn without much thought. The next, there was a road. 2 lanes, fresh blacktop, a center line so sharply defined it looked painted seconds ago. It ran straight out from the depot and disappeared into a horizon that didn't match the one I remembered. The desert was still there on both sides, but it wasn't the same desert. The dark between the rocks felt deeper. Not just absence of light, something heavier. The sky above was familiar, but the way it sat over the road wasn't. Like the road belonged to a different version of the same place. The fare box pulsed green. "Proceed." I put the bus in gear. The engine responded immediately, smoother than anything that old should have been capable of. No lag, no vibration beyond what was expected. It felt less like starting a machine, and more like continuing something that had already been in motion. I pulled out of the depot and onto the road. The moment the front wheels crossed the threshold, the air inside the bus shifted. Subtle, cooler, like I had opened a window somewhere without realizing it. I checked the mirrors out of habit. The depot was still there behind me, but smaller than it should have been. I kept driving. 45 miles per hour felt right without needing to check. The bus settled into that speed like it had chosen it, not me. The road didn't resist. No imperfections, no dips, no signs of weathering. Just smooth, uninterrupted surface stretching forward. Mile marker 1 appeared on the right. Then 2. They looked new, too new. The reflective surfaces catching my headlights without any of the dulling that comes from time. The fare box flickered again. Stop 1 approaching. I scanned the road ahead. At first, I didn't see anything. Then the shape resolved. A pole, metal, simple. A small rectangular sign attached near the top. A man stood beside it. He hadn't been there a second earlier. That's not an exaggeration. I had been looking directly at that spot as the bus approached. The pole appeared first. The man was just there after. No movement, no approach, just present. I slowed the bus. The doors opened with a clean mechanical sound. The man stepped forward and boarded. He wore a work uniform that looked decades out of place. Fabric thicker than modern equivalents. Cut looser. Colors faded in a way that suggested age, but not wear. His eyes were open slightly too wide. Not dramatically, just enough that it registered. He didn't look at me. Didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket and dropped coins into the fare box. The sound they made. It was wrong. Coins have a specific sound, a light metallic clink, sharp and quick. These were heavier, denser. They hit the tray with a flat, dull impact that lingered a fraction too long. The fare box shifted to amber. 4 seconds. Then green. The man turned and walked down the aisle, choosing a seat 3 rows back on the right. He sat facing forward. And then he stopped moving, completely. No shift in posture. No small unconscious movements people make without realizing it. Just still. I closed the doors. The fare box displayed, "Proceed." I drove. For a while, nothing else happened. The road remained consistent. The desert unchanged in its wrongness. The sky fixed overhead in a way that made distance harder to judge. At mile marker 5, the fare box flickered again. Stop 2 approaching. Another pole. Another passenger. This one a woman. Different era. Different clothing. Same stillness in the face. Same eyes that didn't quite settle into a natural position. Same coins. Same sound. Amber. Green. She took a seat across the aisle from the first passenger. Didn't look at him. Didn't acknowledge anything. I drove. By the time I reached stop 4, there were 5 passengers on the bus. All of them seated. All of them facing forward. None of them moving. The silence inside the bus was complete. No breathing sounds, no fabric shifting, no small human noises that fill space without being noticed. Just the engine and the road. At mile marker 12, the fare box flashed red. Do not stop. The text held steady. I looked ahead. There was something at the side of the road. Not a clear shape, more like a distortion, a section of darkness that didn't align with the rest of the landscape. I didn't slow down. The bus passed it. For a fraction of a second, as it moved through my peripheral vision, the shape adjusted, like it had been expecting me to stop. The fare box returned to green. Proceed. My hands tightened slightly on the wheel before I forced them to relax. Rule 6. Do not stop. I kept driving. By stop 7, the pattern had settled. Approach. Passenger appears. Boards. Pays. Sits. Stillness. No variation. No deviation. Until mile marker 33. The fare box went red, before the marker even came into view. Do not stop. The text was larger this time, brighter. I saw it from a distance. The yellow. It stood out immediately against everything else. Not reflective, emitting. A raincoat, bright enough to look wrong under the headlights. Too saturated, too clean. The figure stood at the shoulder of the road, one arm raised, thumb extended, hitchhiking. Human posture, almost. As I got closer, the details resolved. The face, too smooth, no texture, like it had been formed without the imperfections that skin naturally carries. The eyes, they caught the headlights and held them. Not a reflection, a return. Two flat points of light, watching, waiting. I pressed the accelerator. The engine responded instantly. The bus surged forward. I kept my eyes on the road. Not the figure, not the face. I passed it. In the side mirror, just for a second. It lowered its arm and turned to watch the bus go. After mile marker 33, I expected something immediate. Not logically, nothing about the route suggested it reacted that way. But instinct doesn't follow systems you don't understand. Passing the figure felt like a decision that should have consequences right away. It didn't. The road continued exactly as before. The fare box returned to green. Proceed. I checked the interior mirror. All passengers were still seated, still facing forward, still completely motionless. If not for the coins sitting in the fare tray, there would have been no evidence that anyone had boarded at all. Stop 9 came and went without incident. Stop 10 added another passenger. Older clothing, something mid-century, postures slightly hunched, but frozen in place the moment they sat. The pattern held. That was the unsettling part. Not that something strange had happened, but that everything else remained consistent afterward. Like the presence of the figure didn't disrupt the system. It existed alongside it. At mile marker 18, the temperature inside the bus dropped. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed the air against my hands on the wheel. The fare box flickered. Text appeared briefly before clearing. Cold. I didn't have time to question it. Stop 11 approached. The pole, the sign. The doors opened. No one was there. For a moment, I thought the fare box had made a mistake. Then the air shifted again. Colder. From behind me. Footsteps. Not from outside. From the aisle. I kept my eyes forward. Rule 7. If instructed not to look, do not look. No instruction had appeared, but I didn't need one. The footsteps moved past the driver's seat. Slow. Measured. I watched only through the reflection in the side mirror, just enough to confirm movement without turning my head. A shape passed. Less defined than the others. Less present. It reached the middle rows and stopped. No sound of sitting. No shift in weight. Just stillness again. The fare box went amber. 4 seconds. Green. Proceed. I closed the doors and drove. My grip on the wheel had tightened without me realizing it. I forced my hands to relax again, one finger at a time. At mile marker 21, the fare box displayed new text. Check in. A frequency appeared below it. I reached for the radio mounted beside the dash. It looked older than the rest of the equipment, but powered on immediately when I turned the dial. Route 77, stop 11 complete, I said. Static. Then her voice. Copy. No delay, no distortion, like she was sitting in the room next to me, not back at the depot, miles away. Any issues? Idris asked. I hesitated. The word cold came to mind. The unseen passenger. The temperature shift. No, I said. A pause, long enough to register. Proceed, she said. The line went dead. I drove. By stop 13, the bus held 9 passengers, if that's what they were. The silence had changed. Still no movement. Still no sound from them. Like it was accumulating. At mile marker 27, the fare box flickered again. Wait. The text held. I slowed the bus slightly as the next stop came into view. The pole, the sign. No one there. I kept the doors closed. Wait. 10 seconds. 15. Then, movement in the distance. A figure running. Not from the roadside, from deeper in the dark. Approaching fast. Human pace. Irregular. Alive. She reached the stop just as I opened the doors. Early 20s, sweatshirt, breathing hard. Real. Completely. She grabbed the rail as she stepped up, catching her breath. Think, she started, then stopped. Her eyes moved across the bus, registered the passengers, the stillness, the silence. Something in her expression shifted. Where is this? She asked. Her voice sounded normal, too normal for the space. Sit down, I said. What route is this? Sit down. The fare box glowed green. No warning, no change. She hesitated, then dropped coins into the slot. The sound, normal, sharp, metallic. The first normal sound since the route began. She flinched slightly at it, like she had expected something else. Then she moved to the second row and sat, close enough that I could see her in the mirror without adjusting it. She kept looking around, at the passengers, at the windows, at me. Why isn't anyone? She started. Face forward, I said, more sharply than I intended. She stopped, turned, gripped the seat in front of her. Her breathing slowed gradually. The fare box remained green. Proceed, I drove. At stop 14, another passenger boarded. Same as the others. Outdated clothing, stillness, coins that sounded wrong. The woman in the second row went rigid. She had seen the eyes. People noticed that first. The eyes that don't settle correctly. 15. The fare box flickered. Do not stop. I drove past. No protest. Green returned immediately. The woman leaned slightly toward the aisle. What is happening? She whispered. I didn't answer. The fare box stayed green. That was the only confirmation I needed. At mile marker 33, I checked the shoulder without meaning to. Empty. No yellow. The absence didn't feel like relief. It felt like movement, like something that had been in one place had chosen to be somewhere else. At mile marker 40, the road began to change. Not visually, functionally. The air ahead looked lighter, the darkness pulling back slightly. The fare box displayed, terminal approaching. The passengers didn't react, didn't shift, didn't prepare. They remained exactly as they had been since boarding. The woman in the second row sat very still, her breathing controlled, eyes forward, listening. The platform appeared gradually. Columns, roof, light that didn't match any source I could identify. Not white, not yellow, something between, warmer, stable. I slowed the bus. The doors opened. The passengers stood. In order. No hesitation, no interaction. They walked off the bus and onto the platform. Through the open terminal doors, into the light. Gone. The woman stayed seated. Go, I said. She looked at me. Confusion still there, but softer now. Like it was already starting to fade. Where? Go. She stood, stepped off the bus, walked toward the doors, didn't look back. The last passenger disappeared inside. The doors at the terminal closed, the light dimmed. The platform was empty. The fare box displayed, return. I sat there for a moment longer than I should have. Then I put the bus in reverse. The drive back should have felt like relief. It didn't. The road behind the terminal was the same as the one I had arrived on. Smooth, uninterrupted, cutting through the same unnatural stretch of desert. But something about it had shifted. Not in appearance, in awareness. On the way out, everything had been unknown. Now it wasn't. I knew what used the road. I knew what waited beside it. And more importantly, I knew that what I had seen once would not stay confined to a single point. The fare box stayed green. No instructions beyond proceed. No warnings. No variation. That was worse. The bus felt heavier without the passengers. The handling was the same. The engine steady. The speed holding where I set it. But the absence they left behind wasn't empty. It lingered. Like something had settled into the space and hadn't fully cleared out. I kept my eyes forward. Checked the mirrors only when necessary. Mile marker 40. I watched the shoulder as I approached it. Nothing. No yellow. No figure. Just the edge of the road and the dark beyond it. I passed without slowing. The fare box didn't react. Green held. Proceed. At mile marker 18, the temperature didn't drop this time. No cold warning. No footsteps. Just the steady hum of the engine and the faint sound of the tires against the road. The system had reset. Or it wanted me to think it had. By the time the depot came into view, I realized I had been counting the markers without meaning to. Tracking distance. Measuring progress. Like I needed confirmation that the road still behaved in a way I could predict. The bay door was already open. The same overhead light. The same stillness. I pulled in and set the brake. The engine idled for a moment before I shut it off. Silence settled immediately. Idris was standing where she had been before. Same position, same posture, like she hadn't moved in the 4 hours I'd been gone. "You completed the route," she said. "Yes." "Any deviations?" I thought about mile marker 33, the yellow raincoat, the way it had turned. Watched me for a second longer than necessary. Then nodded once. "Collect the fare." I glanced at the fare box. The coins sat in the tray. Dull. Flat. Wrong. I reached toward them. "Use this." She handed me a folded cloth. I took it without asking why. Wrapped it around my hand. Then picked up the coins. Even through the cloth, they felt colder than they should have. Heavier. Like they carried more than their size justified. I placed them into a container she set on the nearby desk. She didn't touch them directly. Not once. When I finished, she counted them without looking at me. The total seemed to matter, not the individual pieces. She closed the container and set it aside, then reached under the desk and pulled out an envelope. She held it out. 800. I took it. The weight was right. The bills inside crisp. New. Out of place compared to everything else in the building. "Same time tomorrow," she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer right away. Not because I was unsure, because I was. I looked past her, toward the bus. It sat in the bay, exactly as it had before. Clean. Unchanged. Waiting. My hand tightened slightly around the envelope. "I saw something at mile marker 33, I said. Her expression didn't shift. "You did not stop." "No. That is what matters." It was, I know, what it was, that stopped me. "You've seen it?" "Yes." "How long has it been there?" She considered the question. Not whether to answer, how much to give. "Long enough," she said. "That's not helpful." "It is sufficient." I exhaled slowly. It looked at me. "It does that." It turned after I passed. A pause, slightly longer this time. "It learns," she said. The words settled heavier than anything else she had said so far. "Learns what?" "Drivers," she replied. I felt that more than I expected to. A quiet shift in my chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. "How many have stopped for it?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "Enough." Same answer as before, same lack of detail, same implication. I looked toward the hallway at the back of the depot, the one that led out of sight. You said bring nothing I can't afford to leave behind, I said. Yes. What happens if I don't come back? She met my eyes directly. For you, she said, or for the root. That's not an answer. It is the only one you need. I let that sit. There wasn't a version of this conversation where she explained everything. That wasn't how this place worked. That wasn't how the job worked. The rules were given. The rest was learned. Or it wasn't. I tucked the envelope into my jacket. When do I start tomorrow? You don't start, she said. You continue. I didn't respond to that. I turned and walked toward the exit. The air outside felt different from when I had arrived. Less neutral. Like I was carrying something out with me that hadn't been there before. I got into my car and started the engine. The headlights cut across the lot and briefly illuminated the edge of the bus bay. For a second, I thought I saw movement inside. Not the bus. Behind it. Something passing across the back wall, where the light didn't fully reach. I blinked. It was gone. I didn't get out to check. The drive back to the city was normal. Regular road. Worn asphalt. Familiar mile markers. Radio stations that came in and out with distance. Everything exactly where it should have been. That should have made it easier. It didn't, because now I knew the difference. When I got home, the apartment felt smaller, quieter. I set the envelope on the table next to the unopened bills. For a while, I just stood there looking at both. Then I opened the envelope, counted it. 800, exactly. I paid one of the bills immediately. Not all of it, but enough to change the number. Enough to prove something had shifted. I sat down after that. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check my phone. Just sat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the road, the markers, the passengers. And at mile marker 33, the yellow raincoat, standing at the shoulder, arm raised, waiting, not moving, not following, just waiting. I went back the next night. That part wasn't a decision so much as a continuation of one I had already made. The money explained it on the surface. 800 in cash solves problems quickly. And I had problems that needed solving. But that wasn't the only reason, and I knew it before I even started the drive. The route doesn't leave you where it found you. That was the difference. By the time I reached mile marker 11 again, I wasn't checking directions or second-guessing the location. I knew exactly where the depot would be before my headlights found it. The buildings sat in the same place, the light above the bay steady, the door still closed. I arrived at 11:26, waited. At 11:30, the door opened. Idris stood there, exactly as before. No greeting, no acknowledgement beyond a single look that confirmed I had returned. "You're on time," she said. I stepped out of the car. "So are you." "That is expected." Inside, nothing had changed. Not a chair out of place, not a shift in lighting, not even the air. The bus waited in the bay, clean, ready, unmoved. I walked toward it without being told this time. That was new. Idris noticed, said nothing. I boarded. The fare box was dark, but the movement inside it felt more active than the night before. More aware. I set my hand near it. Not touching. The motion inside tightened slightly. Recognizing. That word came to mind without reason. "You read the rules," Idris said from behind me. "Yes." "Read them again." "I remember them." "Read them again." I picked up the card. Same 8, same wording, but they didn't feel the same. The first time, they were instructions. Now, they were confirmations. I read them slowly, deliberately. When I finished, I set the card down. The fare box flickered. Amber. Earlier than the night before. I checked my watch. 11:41. "That's new," I said. Idris didn't respond. At 11:50, The light shifted. At 11:55, green. Proceed soon. Does it change? I asked. The route does, she said. The rules? No. That mattered more than I expected. Midnight came. The door opened. The road extended. I drove. The first 3 stops were the same. Passengers, coins, stillness, routine. But the familiarity didn't make it easier. It made the differences stand out faster. At mile marker 12, the fare box displayed, "Watch." No color change, no red, just the word. I didn't ask what it meant. I didn't look anywhere except the road. Radio crackled, without me touching it. "Report," Idris said. "Route holding," I replied. A pause. Then, marker 33. The line cut. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was already watching the numbers. The fare box shifted. Red. Do not stop. The same as before, but brighter, more insistent. The shoulder came into view. Empty. I kept driving. Then, movement. Not at the shoulder. Closer. At the edge of the lane. The yellow raincoat stood at the white line. Not waiting off the road. Not signaling. Positioned exactly where the boundary ended. Closer than before. The distance had changed. I didn't slow. I didn't look directly. Peripheral only. Enough to track position. The face, different. Not smooth, not blank. Features forming. Subtle. Incomplete, but there. Like it was learning how to hold them. The eyes still caught the light. Flat, fixed. I passed. In the mirror, it didn't turn this time. It stayed facing forward, watching where I was going. The fare box held red longer than before. Then, green. Proceed. My hand stayed steady on the wheel. That surprised me. I expected tension, panic, something. Instead, focus. Cleaner than before. Like the system had narrowed. At stop 7, a passenger boarded. Normal pattern. But as they passed the front, they paused. Just slightly. Head tilted a fraction toward me. Not eye contact. Not fully. But closer than any before. Then they continued. Sat. Still. The difference stayed with me. At mile marker 18, the temperature dropped. Cold. Displayed clearly this time. No footsteps. No unseen movement. Just the drop. Like a warning I understood now. At stop 11, no one visible. Doors opened. Pause. Then the same presence as before. Boarding without being seen. I didn't check the mirror. I didn't need to confirm. I knew the pattern. The route continued, but everything was closer. Not physically, functionally. The system tightening, adjusting. At mile marker 33 on the return, I checked the mirror. Quick, controlled. The yellow raincoat stood on the white line again. Same position, same distance. But now, 1 foot angled slightly toward the road. Not fully in. Not yet. Closer. I looked forward immediately. The fare box stayed green. Said nothing. That was worse. When I pulled into the depot, the door was already open. Waiting. You saw it, she said. Yes. Position? White line. She nodded once. It's advancing. I figured. She studied me for a moment. You maintained speed. Yes. No hesitation. No. Another pause. Then, good. It wasn't praise. It was confirmation. She handed me the envelope. I took it. Didn't count it this time. I already knew. Same time tomorrow, she said. I looked at the bus. Then back at her. How close does it get? She didn't answer immediately. Then, close enough, she said, that the door becomes a question. That stayed with me. I drove home with the radio off. Didn't check my phone. Didn't turn on any lights when I got inside. I sat in the dark for a while, thinking about the white line, the distance, the way it had changed. Incremental, patient, certain. I understood something then that I hadn't let myself fully accept before. It wasn't waiting, it was working. And every night, I drove it closer.